I have insurance, and so I don't need to focus on anything else other than just my physical well-being, because a bike is completely replaceable. And the fact that you have insurance and that you're protected and you're covered, all you need to do is focus on yourself and getting yourself better. Like, I'm going to try and I'm going to take risks and I'm going to take chances, because why else? Why would you not, right? I'm Alicia Speak. I'm 37. I'm a full-time lawyer, but I'm also a cyclist for Cycle Team London.
I know you're not here for me. You're here for a man who I will give a very short introduction to, probably the greatest American cyclist to ever race on the road, I think it's fair to say. He needs very little introduction beyond that. So, Greg LeMond.
Thank you.
Now, Greg, I know you've been talking on stage here at the Rouleur Classic the past couple of days. I was thinking, how do we make this different? And as I was doing a little bit of research, I went onto your Wikipedia page and noticed that the picture of you on Wikipedia is you at a race called the Tour de Trump.
I was there. I know. Yeah, I met him twice.
Yeah.
I got a good story about that, though. But I met him twice, 1989. In 2006 or 2007, a friend of mine, he used to bike race and did the Tour de Pont, or actually a couple races, which from Tour de Trump went to the Two-Pont race. And he told me Donald Trump was doing he had a big press deal at Trump Tower. And my friend, his name's Jonathan Cooper, he talks a lot, and I always say, oh, this is Greg LeMond. I said, I'm not going, I don't want to go. Oh, come on, just come down. I said, don't you tell anybody. He wanted me to see Trump again. I said, don't you do that. And my wife were standing towards the entrance of the door, and the press conference was there. And of course, he had all these beautiful women and big event. And I'm just talking to my wife, and he said, I hear this, ladies and gentlemen, we have a world-famous American hero here. And then somebody grabs me, and they pull me up, and I'm going, oh my gosh, what the hell did he do? What did my friend do? And just as I'm walking on stage, he's like, ladies and gentlemen, we have Lance Armstrong here. And I said, no, I'm not Lance Armstrong, I'm Greg. And he was, I never believed this could happen, but he blushed, he was embarrassed. I couldn't believe it.
Did he? And he's never stopped blushing since.
So, yeah, I can't talk politics right now, but I jokingly took a photo from that press deal, and anyways, I can't say that one. Anyway, never mind. I can't say that because it gets out. It's very sensitive right now.
I can't imagine you looked at this guy and thought he's going to be the president of America one day.
Everything's possible in America. That's the American dream, I guess.
It is.
Yeah, I never believed that, but let's stay away from that.
Let's go back to the start.
Never mind.
Pandora's box. We'll leave the Donald there.
Yes.
But if everything's possible in America, did you go up dreaming of winning the Tour de France?
I did. I did. I mean, I said, how many people were here the last 2 days? So maybe, I can't remember what I talked about. When I started cycling, I didn't have a clue what the Tour de France was. And I started cycling to get in shape for skiing. And one thing led to another. I grew up in the Sierra Nevadas, and there was no snow that year. And I was in a bike shop in Reno, Nevada, and somebody came up and said, have you ever thought of racing? I'm like, no. I mean, actually, the 6 months before I was going, my parents bought me gave me a 5-day ski camp in Canada to learn to do flips. And the day that we were leaving, there was a bike race in front of our house, and we were all kind of irritated, like, what the hell's happening here? But it was colorful, and my sisters was bizarre. My family is not into sports. I mean, we were active people, but my parents were blue-collar people from LA, moved to Lake Tahoe, and we got into skiing, but I said my parents' sports were bowling and trap shooting. But we got into downhill skiing, and then in 1972, my mom's a fanatic. She was a fanatic of the Olympics, and Olga Korbut was the big star in America.
Gymnast, yeah.
And my sister got into gymnastics, and she ended up winning actually national championships. She was on the national team. And this is a family that had we didn't realize we had any athletic talent. And just as I'm leaving to that ski camp, I'm kind of jokingly, I said, well, my sister's whole goal was the Olympics. I said, well, maybe I'll make it in cycling. But that was a joke, and never thought I'd get into it. And I came back from that ski camp, and I bought a bike. I used to cut lawns to make money, and bought a bike, and my dad bought one. And so we rode for the next 6 months, and it was great, but I was getting in shape for skiing. So anyways, this guy said, have you ever thought of bike racing? And no. And he invited me to a Reno Willman meeting, and then they talked about a club race 2 weeks later on the same course that the state championships were, the race that blocked us. And I ended up getting second place out of 40 people, and one guy was a national champion. So they all told my dad, I think he's got talent. So that's how I got into cycling. I showed up, there was one bike in Reno, Nevada, yellow Chinelli, and I bought a matching jersey. And turns out Mike Sinyard from Specialized, that he was distributing Chinellis, and that was
It was him?
Yeah, but no, that was the bike he distributed. It was sat on the shop floor for 2 years before I bought it. My dad bought it.
Wow.
And Rick Bulis, he would not sell us that bike. He said, it took us 3 or 4 days. He said, kid, you're never going to do a bike race. It's too hard. Anyways, I showed up to my first bike race with the yellow jersey and yellow bike, and a couple people looked at me. The guy who turned out to be really good friends with me looked at me with disgust. And a guy named Kent Cordy helped write my first book, and he invited me to Europe 2 years later. His dad lived in Geneva, Switzerland. And so they invited me over, and I spent 2 months. We raced 2 days, and 2 races in Switzerland, which I won both, 2 races in France, which I won both. Then I came to Belgium, which was the hotbed, and out of 8 races, I won 6 and I got second the other 2. Then I went to Poland by myself and got 3rd place overall and won a stage. But during that trip, I rode from Geneva with Jean-Claude Keely to the Jouplan, and I saw the Tour de France, and that was it. But I was really good in the U.S. at that point. I was winning all the, let's say, amateur races would be like the national team riders. And but at the time, everybody said, nobody can compete against the Merckxes. And they were these mythical gods. But I realized that if they all started off like me, juniors, they have to put their pants on with one leg at a time. And that's when I came back, and I sat down, and it's crazy to think about this, 17 years old, but I put 4 goals down.
Yeah.
And one was, I was 9th place in the Junior World Championships, and it had a bronze medal in the team time. So the next goal was win the Junior World Championships, win the Olympics. And then I was modeling my career like Merckx in that, win the World Championships pro by 22 and the Tour de France I gave myself a year or 2 because I'm American. Win it by 25. But I got them all.
You've mentioned Eddie once there, and again, when I was sort of looking up the relationship between the two, and I think actually in the latest issue of Rouleur, this is mentioned in the interview that you did with Andy, the editor. Of course, you won the Tour 3 times. You won the Worlds twice and the Junior Worlds once. But you never won a classic. And he said, well, anyone can win the Tour de France. That's easy. You've got to be hard to win a classic. Eddie Merckx said that about you.
Well, Eddie Merckx didn't enjoy shotgun blast to his back. And so, honestly, I think that people forget. And it got really got old when people said I just focused on the Tour. And they claimed that I was the one who modernized cycling. But what they don't realize, I raced every classic. And when I got shot, I was a different person. I never came back the same way. And it is true, the classics take a lot of years, but Gilbert Duclos, who was my teammate, raced Paris-Roubaix 14 years in a row till he won it. So, I was second in Milan-San Remo, second Lombardy. I had, I was always competitive in Tour of Flanders. I think I get 6th or 7th. But when you're an outsider, and I was also on the French team, which was not the focus of the classics, and if you're on a Dutch team, a Belgian team, a big advantage.
Would you, from your Palmares, would you trade a Tour win for any of the classics?
Not a Tour win, but World Championships.
A World win. That's a pretty hard one-day race to win, the Worlds.
So my 2 races I loved was Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix. And so when I went to Belgium, in '78, and I met a girl there, and she ended up marrying Dirk de Wolf.
I thought you were going to say it was your wife.
No, this is before my wife.
Your wife is here. Okay.
This was before my wife.
Oh, wow, okay. I hope she's not listening.
Long before. No, the funny story, it is crazy. I met her the year before, and I was 16, 17. I thought we're the same age. And she invited me back the next year, and I'm there for 6 weeks. And the irony is, I won every race I entered. The guy who was second was Dirk de Wolf. And then I broke my finger right here. This was I've dislocated it 3 times, and in America, 21 to drink beer, 18 if you're in Wisconsin, 16, 17, you can drink beer. So after every race, I'd go into a bar and they'd give me profit, give me congratulations, buy me a beer. And I'm like, great. That day I came in, Dirk de Wolf beat me. I was second, and he came in and said, profit, whatever he called it, congratulations. I said, well, I didn't win. He said, no, to your engagement, marriage, to Rita Dodson. Rita. I said, Rita, I'm not getting married. I'm 17, going on 18. And I went back and told Rita, I said, what's going on? Everybody thinks we're going to get married. And she started crying. She said, I love you. And then she broke down. She says, I'm not really 16, I'm 14.
Oh, you're kidding.
I hightailed it out of there so quickly. I didn't do anything, nothing illegal, nothing. But the irony is I met my wife. I met her the year before, 3 months later, and I said, I'm not getting married till I'm 30.
Yeah.
That's my mind. No way. Then I met my wife 3 months later, and I think 6 months later we got engaged. A year and a half later we were married. Crazy.
I have no notes for this kind of topic. But
You hear the inside of my, but it was magical. So I went to Belgium to race on cobblestone.
Yes.
That was my, I raced Paris-Roubaix the first year when I was 19 and stayed there to about 240 Ks and did the final attack before Hino won. So my final attack, not the final attack in the race.
Oh, and we've talked about how you met your wife Kathy, which I know she's been a rock for you. You've put down your racing success, a lot of it down to her. But what I do want to ask you about is your brother-in-law, because you mentioned there you got shot. People might not necessarily know that story, but it was your brother-in-law who shot you.
My sister's husband.
Your sister's husband.
Not my wife's.
Not your wife's brother.
Yeah.
Your sister's husband shot you. It was an accident.
Yeah.
Tell us what happened.
Well, I was, in '86, I won the Tour. I came back. I kind of said this story, so I never know if I'm repeating this. But
Don't worry about that. They want to hear it again anyway.
But, after winning my first Tour, it was a big battle with Hino, and I was not given really the credit. Hino gave me the Tour, and it was also, that's your goal from your 17, and you win it, and it just wasn't satisfying like I thought it would be. And I was really stressed out. It was an incredibly difficult Tour de France. I mean, racing against your own teammate and really racing by myself. And anyways, and I was not in great shape, and I went back, and I actually didn't really know if I wanted to race the next year. And I said, that's kind of, I don't know, it's hard to explain. And then I went back to Europe, and I'm like, I love racing. But I wasn't in great shape, and I broke my hand being in the dead zone in bike racing, either in the front or very back. And so I've avoided a lot of crashes by staying in the top 15 the whole time. But I broke my wrist, came back to the U.S., and I wasn't supposed to race for about 6 months. And April 21st, I think it was, I used to trap shoot, not really a big hunter, but I used to do some bird, pheasant, and quail hunting. But I got invited to my uncle's farm for opening turkey season. And turkey hunting is notoriously dangerous because you dress in camouflage. And this was my first time turkey hunting, but most importantly, the first time my brother-in-law ever went hunting, and I think the first time he ever shot a gun. And he forgot to bring his glasses.
Okay.
So,
good stuff.
Not a good story here. But we separated out, and he went to the right, my uncle went to the left, and the talk, turkey, they kind of roost and go they feed and go back. And so you can figure out the pattern. So the goal was to go sit in front of these berry bushes, tuck into them, and one over here, one here. I was in the center. And so I sat down and just stood up to see where everybody was. And the moment I stood up, I heard a gun blast. And I thought my gun went off. And I said, I always point this out. Gross looking fingernail, but that's the first thing I saw was blood here. But I couldn't figure out, it's kind of weird. You watch a movie, and a couple of movies I can tell they're accurate. Somebody's really been shot, because you don't feel it. But I went to say, who shot, and my right lung had collapsed, and I was like gurgling blood. And so it was kind of, you're stunned for, you don't even really know what's happening for a couple minutes. I don't know how long it took. But I realized I got shot, and then my brother-in-law came down, and he thought I was dead, and he freaked out. I thought he was going to shoot and kill himself at the time, and so I'm sitting here pretty much dying, and I'm having to tell my uncle to take the gun away from him, and kind of mediate this whole thing going on. Finally, after about 5 minutes, we got to call an ambulance, and we waited there 10, 15 minutes. I don't really remember, but nobody showed up. And I finally had to tell my brother-in-law and uncle. He calmed down. They lifted me up, and we went to a truck and drove up to the top of the property. The gate was locked, but you had everybody sitting there, like 4 fire trucks, policemen. Nobody went past the gate, which was insane. So let me die below. But anyways, we got there and went into an ambulance, and they kept asking for my name and address, and I was fading. And if there wasn't, by chance, there was a police helicopter that was investigating a car crash. I don't know if somebody died, but he was on the way back. Actually met him. He lived out where I used to live in Sacramento, and he decided, just heard about this shooting accident, came back and happened to be there. And it would have been an hour at least to get to the hospital. I was there in about 10 minutes, but I would have been dead.
And what's remarkable is you must be thinking there, your life's almost over, let alone your cycling career, but you did bounce back from that. They had to leave some of the lead shot in you. They couldn't get it all out, right?
Yeah.
Which is going to cause its own problems. You have lead poisoning. Yeah. But you did come back, and you did come back to win one of the greatest, if not the greatest, Tour de France of all time.
It's exciting, and all good tours. Every tour is great. I mean, it's not me or anything, but I think tours, when it's really competitive and there's two people really battling, that's always, I won in 1990, and Chiappucci took a 10-minute lead on me, and honestly, it was the easiest tour I've ever won.
But you and Fignon going right down to the wire, you don't see it anymore. The last stage in Paris is a procession, whereas for you that year, it was right down to the wire. It was a time trial. You had to take, I think...
I had to compete by 50 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was that year, you can imagine I was ready to quit the sport. I was in the Giro d'Italia. I don't know, after talking the last couple of days, I realized I wasn't such bad condition 89. I actually got 6th place in the Tirreno Adriatico, but I signed with a team called ADR, and I was supposed to get paid money the 1st of January. Not making that much money right now after getting shot, and never got paid, and nobody's getting paid on the team. And I just remember racing just before the Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and I said, screw this, I'm going back home, and had a fun night out, and wasn't ready to race the race. I was so pissed off. But I went back and took about 3 weeks off, kind of deciding again, do I want to continue? And because going from winning the Tour de France in '86 to literally, I was laughed at from when I got back, and you could see the directors kind of smiling, honking, laughing. Literally, I heard this like, ho, I don't know how to explain it. So that went on for almost all the way through until I won the Tour. And but in the Giro d'Italia that year, I went in there with almost a month off, and sometimes I kind of forget all the details leading up to it. But the very first stage, I lost 8 minutes on Etna. But I also had, I'm thinking all this retrospect, but I had horrible allergies in the Giro d'Italia. I never could figure out, I was 3rd in the Giro in 85, 4th in 86. But I never felt 100% there. But 2 weeks after, I could feel like I'm, a Superman. But it really was allergies, grass allergies. And anyways, halfway through the Giro that year, and Trecimiento, I lost 17 minutes, and that was it. I remember seeing Stephen Roach taking off. I'm going, how was I ever that good? And I did break down psychologically, and it was kind of like I letting a lot of steam off. And there's a notorious story that everybody thinks I took EPO because I was a guy that never took an injection in racing, never did. And imagine I did get shot, and I lost well over 3/4 of my blood volume. And so I never did any kind of medical follow-up. It's just kind of crazy. And I was anemic. My hemoglobin was down, but had no iron stores. And it was my masseur, I call my masseur, my friend from California, Aldo. He kept saying, Greg, you look like a woman who's menstruating. You're gray. And
That's nice of him.
Menstruate? I'm not menstruating. But he was right. I had no iron. But I always kind of think, well, that was the turning point. It probably was, but also I kind of released a lot of pent-up frustration. My wife said, don't quit now, make it to the end of the year. Then if you've tried everything you can, then then you can quit.
Because it's interesting, those big years of your career were dominated by the two dominant French talents of the 80s, Hinault and Fignon. But actually going into the 89 Tour, I think it was Pedro Delgado who was the favourite to win it. Now, the two of you dispatched him fairly quickly and then became...
He missed the start.
Yeah, it became a ding-dong match between the two of you. What are your abiding memories? Or what emotions do you remember from that 3 weeks as the two of you were sort of... You never got less than 50 seconds from each other.
Well, I was building up to that, but that's why I got sidetracked. But the Giro d'Italia.
Yeah.
So I started feeling better within 4 or 5 days of Trade Chamberlain Laredo. And I had a couple rest days. And all of a sudden, the last 2-3 days, I mean, the first time in so long, my legs started feeling really good. And I decided in the last time trial, Jose De Caro was my coach, and I said, you know, I haven't tested myself really. So when you're in a stage race like that, once you're off, you're kind of getting through it. Maybe you go for a stage win, but it's never like you're racing for the win. And so I decided I was going to race as though I'm going for the victory of the Giro. And I ended up getting second place, and Piaczewski won it. Rumor has it he was holding on to a car. Seriously. But I beat Fignon by a minute and 21 seconds. So going into the 89 Tour, I know it looked really like I was so far down, but I actually calculated, I think the day before Friday night, there was Saturday they came out with what are my odds? And there's one guy that gave, maybe they thought I could win it, and then me, 2 people out of 20. But I actually calculated, and I figured that the amount of time that I took out of him, of Fignon, without the aero bars, anything, I probably could win it. And within 1 or 2 seconds, that's kind of my calculation. Plus, I felt I was riding better. But so I felt like really confident I could do it. And I do believe I won the Tour the day before because our coach, Cyril Guimard, he said, you know, the race is never over to the finish line. And Fignon came up, tapped me on the shoulder and said, congratulations for your second. And I'm like, ooh, you've lost it. Yeah. Really?
And he was meant to be clever.
Well, but he got too confident. And I think in the first 2 kilometers, it took 10 seconds out of him. Because I knew he was going to start off like, I got this race won. And he actually did a very good time trial. I beat him by 8 seconds, but he actually did a very good race.
Well, you rode the quickest time trial of all time up to that point, didn't you, in the Tour?
That's another... Armstrong said there's no way I could do it with that EPO 854, but go there, it's...
What does he know?
I know, but Versailles to Champs-Élysées, you can't ever compare times on a time trial because it was fast, but it was also a lot of downhill. But it was fast. Funny thing about the aero bar, I think I'm always a skeptic about aerodynamic claims. And if you'll see my position, I had a very good position. That was Guimard, but I think in USA Today it said my helmet, I gained 3 seconds a kilometer. With the bars, I gained 4 seconds a kilometer. I'm like, holy shit, I didn't have to pedal. So, but I did a wind tunnel test. A year later, and the helmet caused 10 to 12 seconds drag, and the bars only gave me 8 to 10 seconds break even. So, because if you're really aerodynamic, the bars were. If you were Fignon, it would have been. I told Fignon, now remember Guimard, all the aerodynamics that you see here, the deep dish wheels, we had that in 1982. Everything that you see today was there, except the aero bars. But he had them. Fignon had them, and they decided he couldn't breathe. So I said, that's where you lost it.
While he was confident of winning the day before, was he a gentleman in defeat?
No, he was devastated. I mean, I tried to cheer him up on the podium. I say, you've got to, I've got to, next year we'll see. You know, and it's sad. I don't know if anybody heard this, but a journalist, a friend of mine, Philippe Brunel, said that he was good friends with Fignon. And I actually was good friends with him. I liked him. And from that point on, he never went back to Champs-Élysées, and he, for years, would count 1,001, 1,002, 1,000. He's like, I lost it by 8 seconds. And that's pretty tragic when you think. I mean, I would have, hindsight, I go, got it. I don't think it would have devastated me that much, and maybe I should have given him the Tour. No, but it was awkward because every time I went back to France, you'd have these French people like, I can't believe Greg, it's so great. And then they'd look at him and go, how could you lose by 8 seconds? So it was awkward for him.
But I mean, what we're sort of alighting on here, Greg, is you are a natural fighter. You like to take the fight to people, even against the odds of someone like, in the same team, trying to kind of pull your pants down.
That's part of I mean, when I started cycling, I mean, it was kind of, I guess I like somebody tell me I can't do it, then I go,
You really
prove
want
you
to
wrong.
do it.
It is kind of weird. Sometimes it does motivate me. And it's part of, I mean, coming from America, I mean, it was always, I said right away, everybody said, I had a big debate with the national coach. You'll never make it. You got to stay till the Olympics. It's too hard. And I'm going, screw you. I'd say that. I told this story yesterday with Guimard when I was third, and Fignon was first, and I was on antibiotics for like 3 weeks or 2 weeks or 2 or 3 weeks, and Guimard, Lobby Claire Tepe made me this incredible offer, 3 times what I was making, and I went back to Guimard and I just said, I was making $100,000. They offered me 300, almost 350,000. And I asked for $50,000 uptick. And he said, nope, you got to wait till you win. You'll make money winning 3 or 4 tours. But he said that you'll never win. I would never win the tour without him. And that's sealed the deal. And I'm like, goodbye. That's it. So
there are so many more fights we could talk about. The legal fight with Trek, Lance, obviously, the arguments with Eddie Merckx. I want to park that for the time being. We haven't got much longer to talk about. What I really want to talk about is your sunglasses. Because no one wore them like you.
Yeah, Oakley. That's a good story, too. Because Oakley, I was approached, because at that time, 83, the Tour de France was on TV, and then 84, I got 3rd place. And Oakley at that time was a motocross goggle, and they had grips. And I heard they had gone from $4 million to $2 million in sales. And it's now Jim Gennard's no longer the owner. I mean, they sold it, so they reinvented history, but they never designed that. It was, this is what I said about innovation. It's never really coming from these big companies. So these little inventors, and some guy, I think it was out of Idaho, had Oakley motocross goggles. He took the lens, put some arms on, and a nose piece. And so they came to me, and I actually liked it. It was really provided protection. I think I rode like some Varnays in the tour, and I mean, there was no specific glass for cycling. And anyways, I was offered 10% of the company in buck a pair.
No way. Yeah. You still got it?
No. Oh. We figured out, I got 75 grand, 25 grand over 3 years. I think that 10% was worth 200 million in 6 years later. It's crazy.
No way.
So, yeah. But no, Phil Anderson's here too, and Phil was actually with me training when they first approached me, and so I got him a contract. We ended up giving glasses to riders, and it really was, they called me freak in the 86 Tour because the Giro helmet that you see.
Right there?
Yep,
Z1.
that Giro. I actually designed the first one with a guy named Jim Gentis. He dated my sister and came in 85. My sister, he was a bike racer and industrial designer, but he had copied by time trial helmet from 84 and 85 that we had. So I think 84 was a Renault one. Anyways, it weighed 3 pounds, and I said, no way, I'll never wear this. And I bought a baby Bell helmet for my son. Bell helmets were the big helmet, hard shell helmet, but a baby Bell was the styrofoam. It weighed nothing. And we drew on it with a pen, an ink pen, and just created a hairnet. And that came out, that was in January of 86, and 4 months later, I had the helmet and wore it in the Tour de France. So that year, I rode Oakley and a Giro helmet, and they thought it was from outer space. So,
yeah, not us anymore. I'm sure there's plenty of people in the room who wear exactly those brands still. Final question then, and look, we talk about the fight, we talk about the racing. Actually, it seems that what has always got the juices flowing for you is the technological innovation, and that's where your head is very much at the moment with your own composites company.
Yeah, I'm, it's not there yet. We're still fundraising. We're raising a lot of money to make carbon fiber. So I'm praying. I said, have you ever seen the show Silicon Valley? And that's what I've been living for 3 years. It's very stressful. I think that's why I've aged 15 years. But I was actually, after Trek, I parted ways. And really, once I had this falling out with Armstrong, they never got me involved with the design of the bikes. It was just kind of put me on the side. And we ended the relationship in 2008, but really 2010. And I was just sick of cycling, just the whole politics. But it really was that internal battle, because I made one comment, and it wasn't even mine, it's David Walsh's. I said, I don't have anything to gain by saying anything. People are crazy about Armstrong, what am I going to say? And he said, well, Greg, what you say, if he's clean, greatest comeback in the history of sport. And I said, absolutely. And he said, if he's not, well, greatest fraud.
He put words in your mouth.
Yeah,
what
but
journalists
the
do,
irony,
I'm
a week
afraid.
later, Armstrong calls me and said, why'd you call me a fraud? And I said, I didn't. I called you the greatest comeback in history of sports. So he literally admitted what he was doing. Anyways, that became incredibly stressful. But when, I think 3-4 years later, I decided I really wanted to get back into it, and because I love product design. And I had some really great ideas that I wanted to bring into the bikes. And so, but I figured I got to figure out how to control my supply chain, which means not going to Asia for production. And I started looking at how to innovate the manufacturing process for carbon fiber bikes. And in that kind of research, I went to Oak Ridge National Laboratory, which is where they invented the hydrogen bomb in World War II. It's called the Manhattan Project. And after World War II, that became the leading world's material science laboratory. And while I was on tour, I was there looking at the advanced manufactured 3D printing that they just developed, and did a tour of the campus and ran into a team that just invented a way to make carbon fiber at 50% the cost. Now, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but the current price of carbon fiber, you use such little carbon fiber in bikes, so it's sporting goods or aerospace and aviation. There's really not a lot of use of it in cars, so this application for this low-cost fiber is, maybe 100 times bigger than what it is today. So I ended up, this is how luck, and still, I said, not easy. But I ended up hiring the team, and hired the team because they were licensing the technology out, and I went in and said, well, how can I get this license? Well, you have to know how to make carbon fiber. I didn't know how to make it, so I hired the team that did, and 6 months later, there was another research laboratory, with what they call semi-industrial production lines. A lot of labs to make carbon fiber, they're these tiny little toes, and they go through in their tiny little ovens. This is like a production, 100-ton production facility, which allows you to really take what's been developed in the lab to commercialization. And the only other place is Deakin University, and we happened to call up the laboratory because the line was down at Oak Ridge. We wanted to run some tests on fiber, and we had just announced our licensing agreement with Oak Ridge, and the lab there had just invented another breakthrough. In 60 years, 2 breakthroughs. And they kind of bragged, and they said, well, we did something else. We did, the one process is a different process, but this is, they had a technology that speeded up the oxidation of carbon fiber.
Okay.
So, and when you make carbon fiber, it's basically acrylic, like out of what you make sweaters out of. It's got a good content of carbon in it. And you make the string, and then you bake it, and you stretch it, and that aligns the carbon fiber molecules. And then you kind of keep baking it and keep stretching it, and then you go through 2 furnaces of carbonization, where you burn off everything. That's what creates carbon fiber. So now we go from 90 minutes oxidation to 15 minutes. So we get 4 times the amount of output of. So this company it's got the 2 most important breakthroughs in carbon fiber in the last 60 years. But there's so few people that know about carbon fiber, understand it.
Yeah.
It's been difficult to raise money. It's been a big challenge.
I'm still not sure I do, to be honest. But we'll have to start.
But I've been able to leverage all these relationships within the carbon fiber industry to come up with some pretty cool stuff for bikes. So sometime next year, we're going to be coming out with bikes.
Really looking forward to seeing those. And I'll ride one if you give me 10% of the company.
No problem.
Obviously, life is non-stop for you, Greg. Really busy ever since you started racing, and busy even so now in the US. So it's brilliant to have your time here at the Rouleur Classic. Please show your appreciation for Greg LeMond.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really good.
That's good.
Coming up next, we're going to have Tom Stanton talking about building the British